freedom over fame. Freedom over cycle stays the same.
All right, and 3, 2, 1, here we are. Band babes. Hoo, ha, band babes. Hoo, ha, here we go. Hoo, ha, band babes.
I just want everyone to know that she was like deadpan in the face until we started recording. Like truly 30 seconds ago, giving me a dead stare. And now she's all light and love.
You have to save it. You know what I mean? I only have so much energy output for the day, and I have to distribute it accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
You should know this as an introvert.
Who's to say what I am?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Cannot confirm nor deny whether I'm an introvert. Lots of people think I'm an extrovert when they meet me. Am I masking? Who fucking knows? I need to get off of TikTok is what I need.
I know you're masking. I'm the one that
You looked deep into my eyes when you said it.
I'm the one that comes home after you've been running around in them streets.
On these streets. What was that TikTok that I saw the other day? I'm for the sheets, not the streets.
That's a perfect description of you. The reason why it's funny, everyone, is because we've been in San Diego for about
3 months.
3 months now. She has not gone out with one friend.
First of all, I have no friends here.
Yeah.
That's not true.
dare
Okay,
you?
that's not true.
How dare you?
I have work friends.
Yes.
And
And
I'm
they-
going out with them on Tuesday.
Okay, so there's a first for everything.
So watch out.
Yeah, and our neighbors have been inviting us over for weeks now. So the same reason why it's taken us so long to record, we're still getting the stuff together at home. We're buying furniture, guys. We spent all day on Friday taking down boxes, organizing the garage.
I know that you guys wanted an apartment update. So here it is. Apartment update corner. But we have missed recording and a lot of things have happened in the last few months that we just cannot wait to talk about.
Yeah, we missed you guys. We actually have the apartment set up now to where it will be a lot easier to get our regular scheduled programming back on. So that being said, we are talking about the Hunger Games Book 1. And it actually is our 10th book recording upload.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, so
Oh my God. When did we start this? Like December of last year?
yeah,
Oh
I
my
think
God.
so. I'll have to look back.
7 months, 10 bucks.
We've had a lot going on in between, so I'm
Yeah.
still proud of it. Even if it was like 2 years, 7 books, I'm still happy to be doing it.
I will say, I'm so happy for everyone who's listening. Jeanna gets control of like most of the analytics and stuff because she has the ownership of our Buzzsprout page.
Mhm.
But she showed me, and we have listeners from different countries. So I think that's so fucking cool. So
Yeah.
welcome. We welcome you from San Diego, California.
And since it is our 10th book we're uploading, we are going to be having a contest. So essentially, we're going to be taking all 10 books that we've read so far and giving out free hard copies of the collection as a band together, just like generating some rewards for people who have been following us this whole time. So
How do they, this is the first I'm hearing of it, how do people apply or submit?
enroll? How do we get the names in the...
Do they email us? We don't have an Instagram, but we do have a TikTok.
So I'm going to be running an ad on TikTok.
Ooh.
And normally I just do like clips of our podcast on there and put some little cut and paste like backgrounds and call it a day. Yes.
Raising my hand.
Mm-hmm.
For those of us in the back who don't have TikTok, how do they apply?
So
Is it called
again,
applying?
it's not a play. So I'm going to be...
How do they enter this contest?
I'm gonna
There
be-
we go.
All right, let me complete the thought,
All right.
and then it'll probably answer your question. So I'm going to be running an ad on TikTok, basically outlining all of these things. And all you have to do is comment on the video, and then we're going to pick basically I'm going to basically be like, hey, let us know your favorite color down in the comments. This is just an example. I haven't decided yet.
The question.
Or your favorite book, or your vote for a book that we should read.
Recommendation.
Yeah. So
I do need recommendations.
give us like a book recommendation. I think we just figured it out just now. Throw down your favorite banned book, a book recommendation, what have you. And we'll pick like a random listener, and it truly will. We'll write down a bunch of names. We'll throw them in some sort of a randomizer, or we'll do it digitally. We'll figure it out. But we'll randomly select anybody from the comments, and then we will DM you, get your info, and send you off that book collection. So
yay, how exciting.
Yeah, and it's just really just a small thank you so much. We're so grateful for everybody who's been following us thus far.
Do international listeners qualify?
Of course they do.
Awesome.
We can send things internationally, I've heard, albeit by mule.
I thought it was pigeons.
Yeah. 10 really buff-ass pigeons just to
Right.
be floating
Well, it
across
just depends. Like, some of the books were thinner than others.
Yes. We're going to figure out the logistics. They're all these cheap motherfuckers. You're going to get carrier pigeons to float over these books. But yeah, that being said, I will be generating that in the coming week. I should get that hard launched by next weekend. And we're really excited to give back. So thank you guys so much.
So just for everyone to know, it is 4th of July weekend in the United States. America, freedom, fireworks.
Why did I just get nauseous? Go ahead. Continue your thought.
I have no thoughts. No, that's not true. It's 4th of July weekend here, which is typically a very America time for us. There's a lot of hot dog eating and fireworks, and aside from the superficial shit, it's a celebration of our independence. And it's a really dark time in U.S. history. I know that we typically cover this stuff super lightheartedly, and we're going to do our best to do it as well again. But there have been so many things that have happened in the last few months that have accelerated the rate at which I'm concerned about my safety in the U.S., even in a state like California. If you're tired, and if you're exhausted, and if you're scared, and if you're angry, just know that you're not alone. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it, because I want to save it for our discussion.
There's a lot of things that have happened recently that are going to tie into the themes of this book. And it just happened to line up that way. I try not to do just the older books that we're reviewing all in sequence. We want to mix it up. And I've really been excited. This was my pick this week. And I've really been excited about reviewing this book because of all the similarities that we're experiencing in America.
And we've both read this book, and we've both watched the movies, but we reread it for the podcast. And to say that some of the similarities, or some of the themes were eerily similar to what we're experiencing in the world today.
So when was the first time you read it?
When it came, I don't know, when the movie came out. When was that?
The movie. Okay.
No, it was like before that, because I remember when the book came out, and I have actively the box set of it. So I remember reading it in real time as it was coming out, and then watching the movie in real time. So I've read this book a couple of times.
And how did you, okay, let's go through the summary of the book first for the listeners out there. We did get our first little bit of constructive criticism from Lorena, right?
Lorena.
Yes. Lorena.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So we got our first piece of constructive criticism from a friend of ours, Lorena. And thank you so much for that, because we do want to strive to be better. And we're going to give you guys the content that's going to speak to you directly. All right. To give ourselves just a little bit of a summary of the book title is, of course, as we've gone over, The Hunger Games Book 1. We did not read the whole series. I want to make that very clear. The author's name is Suzanne Collins, and it was published on September 14th, 2008. Okay. The Hunger Games, it's a book that's set in a dystopian future in the nation of Panem, right? Anybody who's watched the movies understands, but I think just like any other, I'm not going to say just like any other, but I'll say true to form or true to consistency, the movie and the book, though both fantastic in different ways, the book just adds so much more detail, and the characters are obviously just built up so much more. So we got a lot of detail from that. All right, so in Panem, or that's where it takes place. and it's divided into 12 districts. Now, we do know in the book that there was a war that happened at some point and that the capital won, and then their nation got divided into 12 districts. Oh no, that feels very...
And we want to be really clear. We know that there's like a lot of backstory and a lot of precursors have been released since then. We're going as if we've read only book one. So this is what we know from book one.
The story follows Katniss Everdeen, right? So she's a 16-year-old girl from District 12 who volunteers to take her sister Prim's place in the annual Hunger Games. The Hunger Games are a televised event where one boy and one girl from each district, and they do have to be children, must fight to the death until one remains. Like basically one wins. Katniss, along with Peeta Millark, and it is Peeta, not Peter, so they're just making us speak in an English accent. Peeta, the male tribute from her district, must navigate this truly brutal arena while grappling with their own moral dilemmas and the oppressive nature of their society. And they're just kids. The Capitol specifically makes sure that the people that are fighting from each district, the boy and the girl, are under the age of 18. So they have to be children. Now, the book explores themes of survival, totalitarianism. That I always struggle with that motherfucker.
You looked at it and then you looked up.
I'm all get it? Because in my dyslexic mind, it's all you know, like that's all that there's an ism in there and everything else gets jumbled up. And the effects of violence and trauma on the overall nation, right? So Katniss becomes a symbol of resistance against the world, and truly it's accidental, if anything, just because she's a little fiery rascal. And
Fiery rascal.
She's this little, she's pissed off at everything that's happening around her.
I think that's the perfect analogy for what is happening in the world. I'm waiting for the day that we just start to burn this shit down. I don't think...
Who's burning it down?
I don't know. I don't know.
Gen Z, I love you, but you guys are really not very violent. You guys more go to the vote.
Good.
Which is fantastic.
Good.
If we're talking about a literal burn it down, I'm not sure who's going to do that.
I don't think that I'm ready for that.
I can tell you right now, you're not. This is... For all the audience out there, this is the woman who's basically told me, if there was a zombie apocalypse, just
leave me behind. Just leave me. It'll be quick and fast. I'll be a zombie. I will know fucking shit of what's happening. I'm dead serious. Fucking leave.
She's like, I don't want to survive in the woods.
I'm dead weight.
Yeah.
I'm not resourceful in nature. I'm scared of spiders. I can't fucking run because I've got torn Achilles tendon. It's just not, I can't swim.
Yeah, that's true.
Just leave me.
We're working on it.
I don't have we have a bag of rice that I got one time when I was scared that the world was ending. That's it.
There wasn't the world ending. It was a hurricane.
Oh, yeah. In California.
In California.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
That's the book.
But yeah, so basically the themes of totalitarianism. And the effects of violence and trauma. Katniss, like I said, she becomes the symbol of resistance against the Capitol's tyranny, and her actions set the stage for a larger uprising. In this book specifically, it's really just the beginning. Here's her sister Prim. Her sister Prim accidentally gets the name pulled, right? And she's going to go into the arena, and she's going to have to fight all these other fucking kids. Some of them have been training their whole lives. Prim's like a little bitty baby angel who just like heals people. She's a healer. She's herbs and shit. So Katniss comes along and she's, nah, not my sister. And without thinking, she just throws herself in there. And then she just happens to get paired up with Peeta. Peeta's got this long-standing love with her. And it's just everything starts from that point on.
Right. And then you get an insight into the back handlings of the politics of the Hunger Games and what you have to do to win sponsors and how fucked up it makes the people who have won in the past, like their mentor Haymitch, and he's an alcoholic because he's just endured so much trauma, and it just speaks to like the escapism that we all do when we scroll on our phones or whatever we do to make ourselves feel better. So there's so much that we could go into just the book itself. But I think it is, I really do think it is like a really eerie representation of what we're going through. It gave me the similar feeling of like when we read The Handmaid's Tale, like the very first time I read The Handmaid's Tale and the very first time I read The Hunger Games, I remember feeling the same way. Or even like The Giver, like any kind of dystopian thing like that. I'm finding in my older years that I'm like, fuck, if it's dystopian, it's probably just going to be a prediction of the future, which is really scary. But similar to like where we read The Handmaid's Tale, and I remember thinking to myself like, yeah, but that's not going to happen. Like when the women suddenly can't have bank accounts again, or they need like permission to get, I don't remember anymore, but was it like permission to get prescriptions filled?
We needed a man to do anything, get loans.
But like The Handmaid's Tale was like futuristic about that. It was like how we were going back and how they were slowly taking all of these freedoms away. And when I remember reading it and also watching the show being like, yeah, but there would be a fucking uprising if this ever happened. And similar to the Hunger Games where you're like, no, but this could like never happen. Like people wouldn't just stand back and send their kids to go get fucking murdered. And another component of it was, I think it was you could enter your name more times into the drawing if you were getting more food or something like that.
Yeah, they basically said if you needed supplemental help from the government to stay alive, which the District 12
it's like super poor.
Very poor. So it would be comparable to one of the southern states in America. It's not like funny that there's poor states because honestly, with the amount of money in America, that should never be a thing. It's funny that there are poor states and they are the ones that are advocating the least for themselves. They like fucking love it. They're like, yeah, keep us poor and the millionaires get all of our money. They love that shit.
There's a lot of poor people in California too.
No, that's true. But California is not a poor state. No, we're
very lucky.
We have the most millionaires. If we were to piece off from the United States, we'd be
the sixth
largest economy in the world. So I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying that to say that liberalism in the states with lots of money and then conservatism in the states with the least amount of money is so ironic because
it's just oppression.
They love it.
It's just knowledge and oppression.
Institutionalized is what ends up happening.
It's everything that's happening right now. It's all of the Supreme Court rulings that are rolling back protections, that are rolling back standards that we've had in this country for decades because they want us to be an uneducated, unable to make our own wealth, unable to make our own bodily autonomy choices and have to produce kids, like have no right to abortion. So they're forcing us into labor, all the while not paying us absolutely anything federally for paid time off, for maternity leave, for protections for your jobs. So you're just wanting masses of people who have no Department of Education, so no standardized learning, no critical thinking, no help from the government, no healthcare. God forbid healthcare. Like healthcare has been a conversation since I've been being in this world. As far back as I can remember, even before I was able to vote, healthcare has always been a topic of conversation because we just don't have it. And the people who do pay for healthcare, trash, basura, fucking throw it out, start all over again.
Yeah.
Like,
when it's subsidized is the funny thing. I don't think a lot of people realize that the healthcare system also gets funding from the government. So the government is paying for healthcare. We're also on top of that doubling down and giving them more of our money to get basic care. And that basic care, and let me make this clear. I think that the doctors in our country are trying to for the most part, are trying to do the best that they can within the system that they have. So this is not an attack on doctors. This is an attack on the structure behind them.
I'll piggyback on that. I'm not saying what you're saying. However, I'm not giving them as much credit as you are.
How could they change it?
Okay, I'm agreeing with you on that, but I am also really much more aware now than I was before of how much propaganda has gone into every element of our identity as a nation, including doctors believing that this is the best form of healthcare. Time after time, I've heard doctors say, this is the best healthcare you can get. Don't get healthcare from another country. Make sure it's vetted, as if there's not good healthcare in places that are not the US. And quite frankly, I'm starting to believe that this is one of the worst places for healthcare. And that's not to talk shit on any doctors out there, because I guess the way I'm thinking about this or framing this is in the same way that you would want to believe that someone goes into law enforcement because they want to protect and serve. Mm-hmm. That is the oath, protect and serve. Mm-hmm. And you would think they're going into law enforcement to protect and serve their communities. But we both know that's not it.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe it starts out like that. And then
I've never met a cop that I knew from a young age who turned into a cop. Most of the people that I know that turned into cops were like former high school athletes that didn't go much further after that, after high school.
You got all C's in high school, you become a cop.
You know what I mean? And again, not to talk shit on all cops, but we all know how I feel about police officers in general.
Yeah. So I have known somebody who actually knew when he was 12, who is now.
Good for him. The one-off of the millions that we've all known.
Yeah. No, this is not an argument about cops in general. I'm just saying I don't, we've been together for 3+ years and you've never heard me call him. So I don't know where he's at currently.
Right.
Or how that's affected his life. But I can say that when he was my cousin's friend, his name's Daniel. And he was a great kid growing up. I've seen him periodically when I go back home. And he's got a really adorable family, married his high school sweetheart. He was a cop in Oakland and then became a cop closer to his hometown, and a solid dude. But
great. Love that for him. Mm-hmm. But in the same way that I would love to think that most cops get into the business to protect and serve, I would like to think that most doctors get into the field because they want to heal. And I don't think that's actually true either. So
I think nurses want to heal. Doctors like to
that's
fix.
Not true. I don't think that's true, because I've known more nurses than I've known doctors, and most of them get into it for the money. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't think that they get into it for the point of healing. And that's why I'm okay going, I don't think that we have the best healthcare. I don't think that people even think that we have the best healthcare. And I don't think that they have a really good case for saying this is the best healthcare that you can get in the world. Like, it's just not. Mm. How did we get on
We
this?
can definitely go down that. There's a lot of back and forth that go into that one, as I would consider healing more of a spiritual combination to just medical care. Without going fully down that road, let's just keep us on theme. Like, I get what you're saying. I'm just saying that I do think that within the system that is set forth, I think that doctors become doctors because they like to cut shit up and fix it. I don't think surgeons are like, I want to heal people. I think that they're interested in the craft. I think nurses care about people more. In general, they're the ones that have to do most of the actual care work. So whether they want money or not, I feel like they're more the caretakers of the medical field than the actual doctors are.
How did we get here?
I'm not sure. But to circle back around, taking that constructive criticism, I would also like to talk about the authors, because they're the masterminds that bring us these timeless writings that we could talk about forever and ever. So Suzanne Collins, she was born on August 10th, 1962 in Hartford, Connecticut. She's an American television writer and author. She's best known for The Hunger Games, but before her success with novels, Collins had a notable career in children's television. She worked on several Nickelodeon shows, including Clarissa Explains It All, that was a pretty good OG show, and The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, and Little Bear. It was the Hunger Games trilogy that catapulted her into national fame. It was also influenced by her own father's military career and her understanding of the impacts of war on soldiers and civilians. The Hunger Games has been adapted into a successful film series, which we just spoke about, and it's further cemented her status as a prominent figure in contemporary young adult literature. The details in her stories, she had to come up with, or she didn't have to, but she came up with very unique names. She came up with this whole world where you can manifest like a cloud and like an arena, or make the elements bend to your will. So I love the concept. I love the political undertones, or actually overtones, of the whole book. And Suzanne Collins is a beast. And that's how I feel about Suzanne Collins. And to go from a children's writer on Nickelodeon to works like The Hunger Games, that's just goes to show you, like, a rounded writer. I'm really struggling with W's today.
See it. I hear it.
Some of the themes that I think are important to talk about, since we're talking about the correlation of this book with America today, is the recent ruling from the Supreme Court to overturn a bunch of cases that were put into law a long time ago. We all, not all of us obviously, but a lot of us look at them as more like the law of the land. They're there to keep us safe. The one that's near and dear to my heart is the overturning of Chevron. And we have this system where we have checks and balances, right? So we've got the Supreme Court, we've got the House of Representatives, Congress, things like that. And then we've got the government entities that are supposed to be specialists in their fields. That's when you have the EPA, OSHA, Department of Education, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. So they're all supposed to check each other. Nobody just has supreme power. So recently the Supreme Court has gone out and just fucking, we all knew about Roe v. Wade, and we talked about that in The Handmaid's Tale. But Chevron, for me personally, was a really big hit. And I do tend to lean on a very optimistic side, because I do think that in order to make change, we have to have adversity. So as soon as things start getting really funky, I'm like, all right, you got to trust the process here. We have to get people worked up so that we can make change. Otherwise, if everybody's life was comfortable, we wouldn't make big change. That's just the way of it. But this one definitely hurt my optimism a little bit, because the overturning of Chevron basically takes pretty much all of the power away from the government entities that are supposed to be specialists in their field. And a lot of what my day job entails is dictated by OSHA. And we can get into government-funded entities and how they can be problematic as well. Nobody's saying it's a perfect system, but their ruling has now said that those government-funded entities, those specialists, do not get to interpret the law any longer, and that will now be decided by the court system. So they've taken that power and they've put it back into their own court, for lack of a better term. And it's one of the, I think, biggest hits that our society is going to be undergoing in the next few years, depending on how everything lines out in November. They've also given the president, they've given him kind of supreme power, if you will. In theory, if we want to go pessimism here, if the wrong person got in office in November when we're going to vote, they could take this newly found power, which is, I think, completely their big picture plan, and they can do whatever they want with America at that point in time. That's going to line up a lot with the themes of the Hunger Games, because you have the Capitol, which are a bunch of just rich fucking bastards, and they run around in these colorful suits and things like that and have all this money, and then they watch the poorer districts just duke it out.
And I know Jeanna's touched on the Chevron case and Roe v. Wade and a little bit about the president's newfound powers and the lack of checks and balances in the government. But I think for me, the way that I look at the Hunger Games right now, the way I look at a lot of literature that has predicted this crazy idea of a dystopian future, is just where once I saw true fiction and true just entertainment, I'm so concerned about the reality that's ahead of us. If you haven't heard of Project 2025, I really implore you to do that and look into it. But basically, the most brief of synopsis is it's an outline for the Republican Party, regardless of who gets elected. So regardless of whether it's Trump or not, the idea is that they have not only presidential power, but power in local government and power in the courts and power in schools. And I've seen it play out. I worked for a K-12 school district for a while, and I still work in education. And I saw what that looked like years ago with one of the school districts that I was in conjunction with. funding the campaign for one of the board directors, and she got appointed, and she put in anti-gay and anti-trans laws for the school district. And it was really shocking and startling and scary. And that was a few years ago. And I don't know if anyone remembers this, but back in like July of 2023 was when State Superintendent of Schools, I believe his name is Tony Thurmond, was booed off of a campus because he was trying to speak about his concerns about anti-transgender ideologies that were forced into Chino Valley Unified School District. And that was because of Sonia Shaw, who was funded by the Republican Party. So even though Project 2025 is now just getting traction, we have to look at things that have been put into place. And this is where my optimism does not show through, because the Republican Party has been organized. They've been cohesive, they've been unified, and they've had a game plan for a long time that they've been putting into place, with Mitch McConnell back in 2016 blocking Obama having a Supreme Court nomination.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we ended up with the Brett Kavanaughs of the fucking world, who fuck him, honestly.
Mm.
That's how we end up with the majority conservative Supreme Court that's overturning really unraveling at the seams everything that we've sewn into law for the last 100 plus years,
50 plus years to date.
So it's not just the overturning of Chevron. They were looking at the abortion pill and whether or not that could be,
whether or not we were allowed to have access.
Because they were saying that the FDA did not do enough testing. And so they didn't get that to go through. So now what they're doing is going after the fucking FDA.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what I don't think we've taken, and I'll include myself in this, because I remember 2016 and I remember all the work that went into not getting Trump elected, right? How much was put out there about, he's so stupid, this is ridiculous, he's never going to win, like he's a joke. And people have this confidence going into 2020 going like, well, yeah, he's a convicted felon, like he's never going to win. And honestly, I don't have that same level of confidence, because it's not about Trump. It's not about him. It's about the ideology behind him. It's about the fact that he ushered in an okayness for people to be outright racist again. World of affirmative action that again got taken back in a world of diversity, equity, inclusion. Again, that's losing interest in campuses. Like, we're not seeing that on college campuses quite as much as we used to. And again, we're in California, so we don't, maybe not so much here, but definitely across the US, we're seeing less DEI initiatives.
Just for people who might be on the fence with this topic, can you explain to people who are on the fence about things like affirmative action, like with people who are listening in other states that maybe they don't fully understand why things like that are important, that directly affect the workforce and the job market as a whole, like where you're working and the influence it has on people around you?
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good question. And for where I work specifically, because I work for a college and I work in human resources. And when I worked for K-12, I worked in human resources. And really the goal is always to have representation. That is the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's representation for all walks of life, whether you're Hispanic or Arabic or Chinese or Muslim or Black or white, is to have your staff be a reflection of the community that it's serving, especially in the area that we're in now, where there hasn't been a thing that I've gone to for my college that they haven't acknowledged the land that we're on and the tribes that used to inhabit this land before we got there. So in that way, I'm very grateful for that. But that is California. And we're very liberal. We're definitely try to include, we raised a pride flag this year on my campus. Mm-hmm. And it's just an effort to have people feel represented, feel seen, and feel understood, and feel safe to be themselves. Where there was the era of don't ask, don't tell, or now, again, we're seeing don't say gay. Mm-hmm. So it's just very reminiscent of 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. Mm-hmm. And that's going across every diversity, equity, inclusion is just one small section of it, but it's also our right to bodily autonomy. It's also gerrymandering and voting rights, and how some states are now requiring you need a driver's license, or you need this, or you need that to be able to vote, when reality is voting should be as accessible as possible. Some places are making it where you can't have a drop-off ballot. Like, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? And that would be fine. But again, similar to, okay, you want to make a forced birth a thing, but then you don't want to give someone parental rights. Okay, fine. You want to make all of these restrictions to voting, but then make it a fucking federal holiday. No one works and everyone has the access to go and vote that day. And that's just not reality. We're now making being unhoused illegal and able to be prosecuted. And let's guess where that goes. If you have a felony, then you can't vote. So it's like DEI is one section of it, but also it all ties into itself, and it's all outlined in this ideology that I don't even want to call it Republican. It's just conservative. And what scares me the most about this is how organized they are. Kind of back to where I was heading there. I find myself having literal like water cooler conversations going, should we vote third party or should we vote Democrat? And I get it because it's trash. Who we have as an option is not it. And yet I find myself always being I voted now, let's see, I'm not going to say how old I am. I was like, I am.
You're a spring chicken, fresh as the day you were born.
This is going to be my 5th time voting in a presidential election, okay?
All right.
So we're going into my 5th time voting in a presidential election. And every single time except for Obama, first time through, I have thought, fuck, we really have to do something about the Electoral College. But every single time we get through it, we just get through it, and then no one does anything about it. And then it isn't until an election year that everyone goes, the two-party system is broken. We need to change the Electoral College and whatever other talking points we have. And honestly, I have no admiration for the conservative side of politics, other than there are some fucking thoughtful motherfuckers that have thought ahead, because they've been laying the groundwork for decades. They've gone long and strong. Like they were pissed when Roe happened, and they've been wanting that to be overturned for decades, and they waited and they made it happen. And so I don't know where my optimism lies, because it's not in the Democratic Party. It's really not. And I'm scared. I'm scared and I'm frustrated because there doesn't seem to be a true representation of what the people want. And that's where we get into situations where something like the Hunger Games feels so much more realistic and terrifying. Because in the same way that I said when our very first episode, the first time I read Anne Frank and I said, what the fuck? How did people let that happen? I look at myself in the mirror and go, Palestine is still being bombed today. And people are dying. And we're letting it happen. And we're actively funding it with our taxes. And there's nothing I can fucking do. And I feel so small, and I feel so underrepresented by my government, and I'm so frustrated, and shit's too expensive, and our rights are just being stripped away at every turn. And Chevron is one thing, but then giving immunity to sitting presidents or past presidents for acts that they've done as official capacities, like what the fuck? Like, what's it really going to take? Is it going to take them going, we're going to just do this thing where every state sends 2 kids and they're going to, like, what the fuck is it really going to take? Because it's the same analogy of that the frog in the water. Like, you just turn the burner up just a little by little, and we're just tolerating it. And I know that people are out there, and I know that people are protesting, and I know that people are pissed, and I know that I'm having those conversations on a day-to-day. And yet it doesn't feel like it's enough. And yet I'm still so scared, because I am going into 2024 election, like presidential election, and I know what my vote is going to be, because I know what I want it to not be. Like, I know that I don't want it to be Trump, because at the very least I can do is I can push back just for a little bit longer the ideas of a conservative party. But that's not going to get us through to 2028. What happens for that one? You know what I mean? So that's been my TED Talk. Thanks for coming.
And thank you for sharing that, because I feel like a lot of us feel exactly that way. I don't think that anybody can argue that the things like Project 2025 or even Trump, even though we do know he has a dedicated following, it's not.
Even he's pulled himself away from Project 2025.
Yeah, because he's even
It's now Agenda 47.
Yeah, even stark conservative. No, Agenda 47 is just kind of something within his own little thing.
I know, but it's him basically being like, I don't support 2025.
Oh, okay.
The example, like the perfect example is our mom.
Mm-hmm.
And all love, like literally love her so much.
Mm-hmm.
And she loves us so much.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say my name right to save her life, but loves us so much
Mm-hmm.
and has always voted Republican.
Yeah, she says that she votes Republican because her dad votes Republican, but she couldn't call out a policy. She couldn't call out any sort of structure that I would say that she has that are aligned with her belief system, other than the fact that she's become like a stronger Christian in her older age, which I think just happens when you get closer to death. Honestly, you're just looking for that light at the end of the tunnel that says, hey, everything's going to be okay. Death is scary, right? So we all know the contributing factors here, right? We've got people pulling away from religion by the thousands, right? Which is what drives Project 2025. You've got these people who have noticed the trends that they were losing for decades, and this is their assault to gain control over the system. I think it's important to also note that this is not just happening in America. There's been a strong conservative movement because they've been realizing that their ideologies are dying with every year that passes. More young people are being born. And the funny thing about it is the more information that gets circulated, the more reinforcement of the, I don't want to call it the liberal ideology, but basically things that are more aligned with a connected mentality. Like, hey, we're all in this together. We don't need somebody to have $20 billion over here while there's other people who are dying in the streets. There's no way that they're going to blow through $20 billion. Why does this person have to die in the streets? So they realize the trend, and this is their last push, ditch effort. They're fighting for their lives, and they did it tactfully, and they did it under the radar. Good for them. France going through the same thing. UK going through the same thing. Italy also. There's just this widespread world push of the Conservative Party. And just recently, we're seeing that those movements are being struck down by the popular vote, by the people, right?
Okay, I have a question. This might sound stupid. This might sound like super elementary because I've been like inundated in this for years, where I pay attention to what's happening, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, whatever, right? I guess for a lack of a better way to ask this, what is the why? Because to me, liberalism has always made sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like equality, like diversity, equity, inclusion, but not really. Like I have my own issues with DEI initiatives at times because they can feel very pandery.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that feels like it's just organizationally based on the organization that you're working within. But like truly, in my mind, when I look at like liberal agendas or politics, the goal is just unity. Like the goal is a space for all to live cohesively. Right? Am I wrong in thinking that?
I think that you're right in your interpretation of it.
So if the liberal agenda is creating like a place where all belong, whether that means it's a gay couple, a Muslim family, the right for people to have access to basic shelter, food, joy, the pursuit of happiness in the US, if that is the goal, then to me, the conservative agenda.
That's your goal.
Okay. Then the conservative agenda, aside from the one thing that I can understand, and I don't resonate with it, but I understand their need to enforce biblical principles. But again, so skewed because the Bible says so much shit that they don't enforce. And it's super hypocritical. I guess, what is the point? What do they want?
Everything that you said, the opposite.
Is that in how is that in alignment with biblical principles, which is love thy neighbor?
Eye for an eye. There's just so many things that can contradict there.
I know that sounds so dumbed down, and the question is so much more complex than that. I just don't understand what the point is of wanting. It honestly just feels like they want to actively hurt people. And no one can actually want that, right? No one actually wakes up wanting to actively hurt people, right? Because even as much as I'm fucking pissed and as much as I want to rage, I don't ever wake up going, I hope, I can't.
Yeah, it's just, they just don't want that, what you want. And they feel as strongly, if not more strongly, about their belief system and yours being just as, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but they feel like liberalism is demonic. It's against nature. It's against God. But studies show it's all just fear-based, right? So they're typically...
It just feels like the biggest scarcity mindset I've ever experienced.
I just told you that the people in the red states are the poorest. So They're just doing their thing. They're just being who they are. But really, it's being controlled by the people who do have money. But I will say, for somebody who was raised in a conservative family, it's just not a we mentality. It's an I mentality. If I work hard, I can succeed, and I earn that. And that's what I deserve because I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and I did the American dream.
That's so fucking weird because I feel like I was raised very similar to that, where it was very much like you work hard, you put your head down. You've met my family, you've met my brother. He's very much, you put in your work, you do your time, but it's also very we based, us, collective, the family, what's best for our family as a whole. And then you bring in people that as need be.
Yeah. And you can still want that for your family, but that doesn't really have much to do with the thought process of the community. Like in that thought process, and I'm not going to speak for all conservatives on this because there's a lot of kind-hearted conservative people or Republicans, but it's just not the basis of the party. Like the party's not the one advocating for human rights. They think that people should advocate for their own. They're not the ones that are putting people in positions where they have influence because they think that should be earned by somebody who's qualified. Where it doesn't make sense is just the fact that, okay, those in a perfect world, that would be true, but the system in America is set up for only a certain portion of people to have those advantages to be
capitalism.
Yeah. So that's why when you see people, especially back in like the 60s or the 70s, that were a minority and they had made it to a position of like authority and value, it was like a big deal because I think the party in general wants to say, yes, you have to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, but also acknowledging the fact that it is hard for minorities to do that because they're in a system that's rigged. And it's, again, I think it just boils down to that party having a me, and then the Liberal Party at least saying out loud that it's a we. I think that the Democratic Party, though, to be clear, I will be voting for them because there's just too much. There's too much at stake.
We're clearly excited about it.
I wanted him to step down after that debate. I was hoping that it would happen with the right person. I wanted him to step down. I wanted him to be primaried out. Like, I don't want him there. I think it's the most dystopian thing, the thing that really takes me back and really makes me go, what fucking world am I living in? Is watching these Palestinians come across my TikTok and say, please don't scroll, just stay here for 5 seconds so I can get my family out of the country and we can survive. And if that doesn't completely align with the Hunger Games, I don't know what the fuck does. They're literally begging for us to give them money so that they can live. So that they're putting their children in front of cameras so that they can appeal to us. And I support a lot of, and I don't want this to sound the way that it's going to come out, but I support a lot of dogs. So basically like shelter dogs, things like that. And a lot of
I didn't see that coming.
yeah, so like a lot of content that comes across my For You page has a lot to do with dogs, and get a little scene of them playing with something. Here's their personality. Here's what they know how to do. Okay, sweet. Max knows how to sit, knows how to stay. He's good for with other dogs. He's fantastic.
You sent them to
Sponsor him. It's very similar content. They've just put humans in that place, and it makes me nauseous. Like the parallel.
That is so.
It's super dark.
Yeah.
And also people on social media are having to trick you. Like they're just being like, hey, I saw this clickbait the other day. It was like, hey, Taylor Swift finally spoke out about Palestine. And then you go follow it, and then it's just a family that needs to be sponsored. So they're actually using tactics to clickbait you into these families now getting sponsored to get out of there. I know we talk about Palestine every single time. I just want to throw out a couple stats. The most children amputees of any war that ever there was. So it's gross. And I think that all to say that I'm not a super big fan of the Democratic Party right now, and I never really have been, because I think that they put on this big old face of like love and acceptance, but they don't actually make the moves, right? So if they put their money where their mouth was, like the Republican Party, we'd probably be in a pretty decent spot, but they don't make the moves. Again, that being said, I'm going to vote that way because there's just too much on the line. And I will continue to vote in this country's best interest because I don't want to end up like the Hunger Games. I don't want to end up having our country having to fight for our lives.
I know I've asked you this privately.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever asked you this on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. Do you think we're going to have a civil war?
I don't think we're going to have a traditional civil war. I don't think that people are going to get out their little machetes and guns and go to bat with each other. I think the conservative party, the Trumpies out there, they love drama so much. They're addicted to it to the point where they fucking fantasize about it.
Yeah, it was like a couple of days ago. Like today's July 7th. And a few days ago, the president of the Heritage Foundation, do you remember? I think
yeah, he was like, and it'll go peacefully if the liberals let it.
Mm-hmm. He said, his name's Kevin Roberts, and he said, we're in the process of a second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's not a real threat. I'm just saying you got to really question what you're standing for if you guys really want to fight over this shit. Because we used to have civil conversations about issues, and then Trump came along, and we can talk about Democrat, Republican all day and policies and what benefits the economy as a whole and the people as a whole. But bottom line is pre-Trump, we had a country that was at least pretended to be unified. Mm-hmm. I would argue that we were at a pretty good place of uniformity. Though Obama he had a lot going controversy-wise. He was well-spoken. He had great intentions, and he cared about and does still care about America. And then you see Trump come in and rips us to shreds. So if they want to fantasize about war, if they want to fantasize about all this stuff, then nobody's going to go to the streets and fucking shoot each other. That's not actually what people as a whole want, even if you call yourself conservative. Like only old fucks want that because they're not the ones going to be going down there to do that. I think that the revolution will be monetary. It just will. At some point, whenever we get our shit together, we're all just going to go, I'm going to sit down. And I'm going to sit down for a week. And I'm going to stop spending money until I get my way. Because we control the money, we control the spending, we control this nation. We've based it on capitalism. The only way we're going to make change is by removing ourselves from that system. And just going, I'm not going to play your fucking game anymore.
No one does it, though.
No, not yet. But I think that the revolution will...
I think we've tried. Like, I still haven't had fucking Starbucks in forever.
It's going to have to be a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Just a couple million in loss we have to go after the big guys. And we really do have to just sit it out. Can you control me if you don't have any money?
Right.
Probably not. And if we take back the power in a monetary way, they're not, again, they're old fucks. They're not going to get out in the streets and make us do things. So that's my personal opinion. I think it all has to be done in a monetary way. And the Hunger Games that did go to the streets, it went to violence. But I just don't think that's realistic for us. And just to keep it, or just to add a little bit of a positive note, that's been a reflection in France and the UK as well. They don't cover it a lot, but France was just outright dumping literal shit on the streets. Like, it was the best protest footage I've ever seen in my whole entire life. Just shit, dog shit, human shit, just all kinds of stuff just being unloaded into the public streets just to revolt and let them know what their wants and needs were. UK rejected it as well. And I think that is the sign that the younger majority, the people coming up, are just not on board with what they're trying to shove down our throats. That's my opinion on that. Do you think we're going to are we going to dance battle this out?
I think so.
I know you've been talking about, like, why don't we just separate? It just feels like the easiest way out at this point.
No, it doesn't feel easy. It feels like, I have said this so many times before, but I feel like I'm undoing all the learning that I did when I was learning U.S. history. And really to have a true, like a more realistic understanding of how physically large the continental U.S. is.
Mm-hmm.
We're just to have so many people unite under one ideology just seems almost impossible at this point. Throw the fucking baby in the bathwater out.
I don't think we're supposed to unite under one ideology. I think we're supposed to have more than two, and I think we're supposed to vote on a majority and not an electoral college. I think that would be a big turning point in the U.S. is the true majority. But
then there are so many people that feel underrepresented, and I can understand. And I really have gone down this rabbit hole of wanting to empathize with people of the conservative party or like people in southern states, because I have lived in Southern California my whole life. I've lived in California my whole life. Like I've had a lot of privilege in that way, and I haven't seen poverty like that. I really just haven't. And I haven't felt like Mexicans were coming for my job because, bitch, I'm Mexican. Like it hasn't affected me like that. But
so whose black job did you take?
Probably someone.
I'm just kidding.
I'm
just joking.
I took someone's. I don't know. Because of that, really have tried to empathize with people who feel like they're losing their place. Like people, like white. To be frank, just white people who feel like they've lost their place.
Just the whiteys who are losing the power and freaking out.
And I want to empathize with that. Where I'm like, okay, you're one's like top dog, and it feels like you're losing it, but it doesn't mean that you're less valuable. It just means that there's more equality. And I think that's where I have a hard time empathizing and then connecting that part, where I start to want to go, okay, I understand that you're feeling threatened and that this is scary, but it's almost like a kindergarten teacher talking to a child going like, and I know we have big feelings and that is okay to have the big feelings. But when we have big feelings, we don't hit people. We talk about it. And it feels like collectively a whole culture of people have felt attacked and didn't have their indoor voices on to go, hey, I'm feeling a little threatened and I'm feeling a little left out. And instead it went straight to attacking. And if that were the only problem, I would totally be like, let's handle this in house. But I think it's the combination of that and the realization that my literal money, my literal hard-earned money is funding something that I so oppose. Like something that I've watched on screen and have cried going, I can't believe there's nothing I can do about that. I can't believe that I'm voting against things and it's not doing anything. It's the combination of not just the politicians, but then the people, their constituents, just feeling like they're only seeking violence and retribution. and wanting to use their power in a way that they're strong arming themselves back into power instead of finding a way to cohabitate with, when I think about like southern states, people who didn't fucking choose to be here, who were brought here on slave ships.
Mm.
And now are as American as any one of us because this was the place of their ancestors, right? And now they have to live in states where they're just constantly reminded of the dangers of everything that happened. And culturally getting to see how that plays out in music and movie and TV and how, and again, it's fucking weird to watch us move forward and then move back and then move forward and then move back. And I don't know what the ending's going to look like. I don't have the cliff notes for this.
Yeah, I think it's all going to end up okay. I know it's going to end up all right. Yeah, it's just...
I love your optimism.
It's just...
I love your optimism.
I just feel like it's such an easy way out to be like, we'll just separate and that'll solve things. No,
but I don't think that's an easy answer either. I think there would be so much difficulty with that.
I don't care if it was an easy process or a hard process, but I would never separate just because I know that there's people out there in those red states. Little Tom, who's like a transgendered individual who's growing up in Kentucky who doesn't have a voice.
Not Kentucky.
So what am I going to do? Damn him to this ultra extreme conservative lifestyle because I didn't want to spend an extra few years fighting against this party that only wanted supreme authority? Like, absolutely not. They're just afraid and we're having growing pains. Now, does this feel like a disheartening, dark time in history? Absolutely. Do I fight with my inner feelings about it every single day? I sure do. Because we go to our 9-to-5s, we live our lives, and we try to do the things that make ourselves happy. While at the same time, like I was touching on earlier, getting slapped in the face with people who are fighting for their lives via social media. And if that doesn't make you feel ridiculously out of control of change in the world, I don't know what the fuck would. So I fight with it. But at the same time, like I said, when you experience adversity, you have the most growth. And that's just fact-based. If everybody was comfortable, nobody would change. That's the way it goes. So in knowing that we need change, I will, in that way, look at the adversity as something that's going to bring us that, the platform to which we're going to get the change that we needed. Everything in between sucks, and I'm just trying to do the best that I can with the tools that I have. And I have to leave it there. And there's still times where I'm sitting in the bathroom and I'm literally crying just because I feel so overwhelmed about the state the world is in. And I don't want us to end up in like a situation anywhere near the Hunger Games, which feels more and more real every day. I don't want that. So I'm going to vote like my life depends on it, because it does. I'm going to try to go out and protest. I'm going to protest whenever I can. I'm going to boycott whenever I see fit. And I'm going to do my part in any capacity that I know how to. And I'm also going to make space to be happy, because that's important if I want to continue to make change. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make podcasts. I'm going to make jokes on the podcast that probably are not funny. And I'm going to talk about good books and heavy issues with hopefully some lighthearted stuff in between. And I think that's all we can do.
That was beautiful.
It's true. I've been rambling on for a bit. We've gone back and forth. I would like to close out this podcast with a quote that I want to start plugging in some quotes from the books, short or long. So if you want to look one up too, you can. But
I don't need to look one up. I got one.
Okay, cool.
You go first.
One of the quotes that I really liked, it was from Plutarch Heavensby. And hopefully I don't really just destroy this. But he said, Panem e circumcensus translatesto, which I think is Latin. And it means bread and circuses. And the concept is basically that the capital, or we'll say in our case, the government, it just distracts us with food and entertainment to keep us from rebelling. And if the government's not doing it, the corporations are. It just felt so relevant and just the perfect little phrase to the control that is being implemented all around us.
I love that.
I also really like the quote, "You don't forget the face of the person who was your last hope," it was said by Katniss Everdeen. And she was referring to something that Peeta did when he was younger. And he had thrown bread at her while she was starving, kept her family alive that day. She ended up, like I said, going into the Hunger Games as technically as adversary. And I just thought it was such a poetic way to outline their history.
I love you, and I love all of your optimism. My quote is from Haymitch, and it's this. Here's some advice. Stay alive.
She a fan, she a fan, she a fan.
Be a fan.
She a fan, she a fan, she a fan.
We didn't even talk about Kendrick.
Let's talk about Kendrick is doing well. Who's not doing well is D to the rake. Because he is like us.
Drizzy.
Drizzy. And when I say us, the only white person in this house right now.
Do you think Paramore's white? Paramore's our dog.
I don't know.
She doesn't give white girl energy.
What energy does she give?
I don't know.
I'm trying to think of what her...
Sleepy girl energy.
She thinks a lot of herself. When she's awake,
she
thinks a lot of herself.
We've gotten on a tangent.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us during this moving process. Like I said, we've got a pretty good setup now, so we should be able to get back to our regular schedule. We love you guys, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, whether you agree with us or whether you don't. We love you. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye. And that brings us to the end of another episode. If you found this discussion insightful and thought-provoking, don't forget to show your support. You can find all the links and references mentioned in today's episode in the description down below. Whether you're looking for articles, books, or additional resources to explore, we've got you covered.
And if you haven't already, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. Your support means the world to us. It's the best way to stay connected and engaged. It gets our books out there into the places where maybe they might not be reachable because they are banned.
And if you're really passionate about what we're doing and you want to take your support to the next level, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
You'll be gaining access to exclusive bonus content, which I don't post to the regular platforms. And you'll even have the opportunity to vote for the next book that we read and suggestions for topics and future episodes. Thanks again for tuning into the Band Together podcast. You can follow us on TikTok. Your feedback and involvement make this podcast possible. So keep reading between the lines.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.